So I'm not sure if you noticed, we certainly noticed, but my mother and father-in-law returned to the fold. After a lengthy adjournment, they're back at home and back in church, and which has been nice. But maybe that's because of that return. I was just reminded of this story that I heard about a man whose in-laws had gone to visit Israel and taken a tour of the Holy Land, and while they were there, the wife unfortunately passed away, and when they were trying to make arrangements, the person who looks after that, the amputator, said to the guy, well, we have the body. Most people opt to have it buried here in Israel. It costs about $150. If you want, we can send it home, but it'll be about $10,000 if you want to do that. And the guy said, oh, we're going to have you send that back here. We need to do the burial here. He said, oh, you must have loved your mother-in-law very much. He said, well, it's not so much that, but I remember a story not so long ago where you buried someone and 3 days later they rose again, and I just can't take that chance. Now, I've been blessed with a great mother-in-law. It's her daughter I have trouble. And the other woman's laughing. You know, I don't know if you have this sort of thing, but not so very long ago, I was having one of those very discouraging times. I had a conversation with someone, and in my conversation with them, and they were expressing some things to me about our church that I was just really struggling with hearing, or I don't know. Anyway, I just was feeling really discouraged. I was feeling discouraged in our ministry here. I was feeling discouraged in my role, and just, you are just find yourself in that place where it's really, you're really struggling, and if you're at all like me, when you're having those down days, your mind tends to go into old thought patterns, and so I found myself being cynical and skeptical of a lot of things, and it would happen as we're approaching the Christmas season, and I'm working on messages that reflect what has happened, and you start to, the cynical side of me starts to even go so far as to question, the God, and start to question what He's doing, and is He really working, and you just end up just in this really negative cycle of things. And as I was having that day and just really battling it, the next day I found myself at Costco, and if you've ever been to Costco, I found myself at the back of a line. And so just out of habit, not because I was feeling particularly friendly, but I just started a conversation with the person in line beside me, and really nice lady, and we didn't talk about anything of real consequence. We were just, we're Canadians, we talk about the weather, and and just in the season and how busy the store was, and she just remarked to me how she felt guilty knowing what the bill was going to be, all the stuff she had in her car, because she recognizes how fortunate she has to have the ability to buy that stuff, to get the turkey that she was buying, to get all of that stuff, and knowing that there are people in the world who will go hungry on Christmas morning, who won't have all of the things that she had. And it was just one of those conversations where I expressed the same sentiment, though you're feeling inside you're grumbling. I don't know if you get that. I'm being nice, but inside I'm. And then I got into my car, and in one of those fortuitous sort of things, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but a song was starting just as I started my car on the radio. That ever happened? You're not right in the middle. And it happened to be my favorite seasonal song. What are you doing New Year's Eve? I don't know if you know it, but I love the song. And it was the really bluesy version that Idina Menzel does, and I love that version especially. And so I'm singing along as loud as I can in my car. No one else is there, so I don't have to worry about hurting anybody's ears. And then the next song that came on, and I understand some people don't like, or they think Christmas carols should be only, one little short week or maybe even a day of Christmas carols, but I don't believe that. As soon as Holly on XM radio started, we were tuned to it. We're listening to Christmas carols. I would still be listening now if they still had them on. I think they should be sung all year long. I love them. And Hark the Herald Angels Sing came on, and because I'd already been singing, I just kept singing. I was singing along, and as I was doing it, your spirits start to lift, and I realized I'm not just singing the words, I'm praying them, I believe in what they're saying. Jesus our Emmanuel, and it just struck me in that moment. I was reminded of the story about the couple on the road to Emmaus. Most people have heard a message about this, usually around Easter time, but I was just reminded of that incredible story in Luke, of this couple, probably a married couple, who are walking to Emmaus from Jerusalem. And well, let me go into it. It's worth hearing again. This is Luke 24, verse 13. It starts and it says this. Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. Now this is after he's been crucified and buried. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen visions of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see. He said to them, 'How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?' And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he was going further, but they urged him strongly, 'Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over.' So we went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, 'Were not our hearts burning within us while we talked with us on the road and opened the scripture to us?'" That you maybe can see immediately why that story particularly came to my mind. In my time of discouragement, I found myself like the couple on the road to Emmaus. Like that couple, I found myself in a time where I place all my hope in Jesus, but I find myself discouraged and falling into that old skeptical thought pattern where I'm doubting myself, I'm doubting, my calling to ministry, I'm doubting even God and his work, and yet God is faithful and true, and he sent a lady to have a nice conversation with me to remind me how fortunate I am. And then the right songs came on the radio to remind me of what God has done, to take me back to that place of solid foundation that I should dwell on all the time. And maybe it troubles you to hear your pastor talk about that, but I think these are real moments in our lives. And I was really facing that moment. And it wasn't like I had made a decision to leave the church or anything like that, but I was certainly feeling down. And it was that conversation that Sunday morning really left me in doubt. For 6 odd years, I've been preaching to you about the love of God. I've been preaching to you about the grace that God has offered to all of us. And to hear somebody who didn't get it, or at least if they got it, weren't expressing it to me on that morning, it was very hard to hear, and it makes you wonder for 6 years, are people hearing that Jesus loves you, that the most important commandments are love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and love others as yourself. And Jesus said that, and are people missing that? And that is heartbreaking, to be in that place of wondering where we're going. And then as I thought about that, I was also just going down this new path of renewed vigor and knowing that Jesus is Emmanuel. He's God with us. He's with us then, and he's with us now, and he was with me in that moment and in that sort of period of time where I was maybe struggling a little more. And as I was thinking about all of those things and realizing that God's ever present, I also realized that maybe, and without realizing it, she was, and I don't know if she was a believer. We didn't go into that depth of conversation, but she, without realizing it, she was Jesus to me. She was giving me his heart that were fortunate. She was reminding me of some truths that I needed to hear at that moment. And I'm struck by that also in that story on the road to Emmaus. This couple who don't know who they're talking to are reminded of some truths, but then they say, listen, don't go any further. Come into our house. You need to eat with us. You need to stay with us. And I think in our midst, not that long ago, we had a visitor, a young man here, and on his way out of the building, he stole Verna's purse. And it struck me that we let Verna down. And here's how. I don't know about any of you, but I didn't engage that young man in conversation. And it's not the job of the ushers, it's not the job of a committee, it's not the job of the pastor, it's the job of all of us, including the ushers and any committees and the pastor, but all of us. It's our job to talk to people. And as a church, aren't we about welcoming new people into our midst? Aren't we about being a welcoming group of people? And don't we think of ourselves as a friendly, welcoming church? We do, and we believe that is part of our character. But don't we also on Sunday morning, we all have friends in here, and we maybe only see them once a week on Sunday mornings, and so we tend to go and talk to our friends that we see once a week on Sunday mornings. And I thought, well, we didn't and I didn't really engage that young man in a conversation. And I think if he comes back again, and it's his pattern, he's been doing this all over town, to revisit churches after a little while, I hope we'll do better as a church to engage him. I'd like to introduce him to Verna and give him a chance to apologize to her. And he's welcome here. We want him to feel welcome here. You know, what's funny is, I don't know how much change or whatever, Verna, it turns out she got her purse back, he kept the phone, and then he changed she had in there, and I don't know how much it was. We probably would have helped him much more than that if he'd asked us for help. But we didn't even engage him, and he was able to walk out the back door, snagging a purse on his way out without anybody stopping him and talking to him. We have let Verna down. We, as a group, have not engaged this new person in conversation, and we need to be the people who do that. We need to be the people who are welcoming to anybody who happens to come by. Be welcoming in the sense of where we want to engage you in conversation. Maureen and I were laughing. There was a young lady who was visiting, and I can't remember who started, but somebody had a conversation with them and then introduced them to Mo, who was like, oh, you have to meet my husband Dave, and so she brought him over to me, and she's a young adult, and she was looking for a church with community, so I immediately connected her to Jesse, who then connected her to Kirsten and my daughter Jessie, and it's like, okay, we probably now overwhelmed her. Probably gone too far, but I'm not sure we did go too far. I think it's important that we made connections in the right way and had that chance to visit with somebody. And I think it's so easy for us to go about our business and to get into maintenance mode in our days, to get into that place where we're just soldiering through. We're completing things that we have to get done, and you go to work and you do your work and you keep your head down and you don't ever look up and see the people around you for who they are and see that those people maybe need a touch from Jesus, and maybe you're the only touch from Jesus they'll ever get. And maybe we need to spend more time on that. And that's outside of these walls. But inside of these walls, how dare we not be Jesus to the people around us? And I don't mean we should only just talk to strangers that way, to each other as well, that we are Jesus to each other. And I recognize that you want to have conversations with your friends here, and I encourage that, and the door stays open for a long time. Stay and visit and have strong visits, but let's not miss that sometimes there are new people, and we're going into a brand new building soon, and we may get additional visitors. And our goal as a church, and please forgive me if you said or thought this, or you've heard me say it the wrong way. Our goal is not to build a bigger church. Our goal is not for this body to become a body of 300. Our goal is to show the love of Jesus to anybody we encounter. Our goal is to be Christ to the people that we encounter. And if you think the goal is to build a bigger church, you're missing the message of Jesus. Jesus didn't come to build a church. He came to spread the love of God. He came to show how much God loves us. And that's our job. He left us in charge of that, to show the love of Christ to everybody we encounter. And I totally get it. You have those days. I have just shared with you about one of those days for me. I don't do it. I don't do it consistently enough. but we need to be better at that. And we certainly, within our walls, have to be good at this. We have to be welcoming. We have to be friendly. Maybe people will stay, and maybe they won't, and it's okay either way. But we have to be friendly to them. And as we're going into that new building, where there are going to be brand new people visiting us, for sure, people who just want to check out the building. Maybe they attend another church and they're happy in their other church. Well, that shouldn't change anything for us. We don't know where people are. We don't know, I don't know, standing up here where you guys are right now. Maybe today you're feeling discouraged or frustrated. Maybe you're struggling with something. Maybe just a conversation with someone who believes what you believe is just exactly what you need on this morning. And we need to be open to that. When my wife and I were, our church in Fort McMurray closed. So we were without a pastor, and it hung on for a little while, but it went from a church of about 100 people, and it dwindled and dwindled. And at the end, there was about 20 of us meeting, and we made the hard decision to close the doors. And so we needed to find a new place to find God. And for a while, we didn't go anywhere, and we found we missed it, and we decided, no, we need to actually find a church. And so we went to visit a whole bunch of churches. And our rule going in, as we were doing that thing that Pastor Stage talked about, that church shopping, right? As we were doing that, our rule was, if somebody invites us out for lunch after, would we go? And if the answer is, yeah, we would probably go, then that church can stay on our list of potential candidates. But I'm going to tell you, in all the churches we visited in Fort McMurray, only one church ever offered to take us out for lunch. Only that one church was there a family that invited us out for lunch. And it was a creepy church, and we didn't go. I know that's wrong to say, but they had sort of kidnapped our daughter right at the start. They grabbed Jessie, who was a baby, out of my wife's arms, and she disappeared. And we're like, where did our daughter go? So they were making sure we didn't go. We stayed till the end. And anyway, it was. I can tell you the story some other time. Anyway, so we didn't go out for lunch. We just rescued our daughter and went. But at so many churches, no one talked to us at all. No one even engaged us in conversation. And recently, our family were in Abbotsford, and we decided to find a Sunday night church. And so we searched, and we finally found a church that did a Sunday night service, and so we went to visit that church. And they had a coffee break in the middle of the service, and everybody sort of talked, but nobody talked to us. Like, nobody talked to us at all. They clearly were talking to people that they liked and friendly, but it's isolating. It's really tough because you feel, maybe unnoticed, unworthy, something. You're at a loss. And we were standing there, and then I thought, well, maybe because it's a short coffee break, maybe after church. Well, no, because they have the coffee break in the middle. After church, the coffee was whisked away in the second half of the service. And after church, everyone left. There was nobody in that building 10 minutes later. Everyone was gone. So they don't know who we are. We happen to just be visitors looking for a Sunday night service. But we could have been seekers. We could have been a family who was trying to connect with God for the first time or another time or new to the community. They had no idea who we were. Nobody even tried to talk to us to find out anything about us. But I bet you that church feels like they're a friendly church. It's not enough to feel like you're a friendly church. The only way to be a friendly church is to be friendly. with everybody. You know, there are people that you really, really enjoy conversations with, and people that you sort of enjoy conversations with, and then there's people that maybe you don't want to get in conversations with. But our job is to be Jesus to the other people we encounter. And we should be prayerfully and mindfully thinking about that every day, and especially on Sunday. Like, who would God put in my path today? Who would I talk to if I could? And I'll tell you, if I'm being honest, and why stop now? That young man tried to talk to me. I was on a project. I needed to get to a certain person to talk, and I didn't make my way back to him. But I should have stopped and engaged him in conversation. It's my fault. But I'm not the only one here. None of us did that thing that we sort of pride ourselves on. And I'll tell you, when Maureen and I were looking at going into ministry and finishing my degree at Briarcrest and looking for a place to come, there were several churches that we had talked to, and there was another church in the Edmonton area that was interested, and we had visited the weekend before we came here. And it was kind of the opposite of a small Baptist church. It was a really large Pentecostal church. But what really made the difference for us was how engaging and friendly this community of faith was. Like, how people were lovely to talk to and wanted to talk to people around us, not just us, but it was clearly a great, and I love how long, some days I just want to go home, and so I don't love how long, but I love that we really like to talk to each other, that we hang on, and sometimes we hang on for an hour and just visit, and I love that about us. And on my grumpy days, obviously, and I want to go home and I'm tired, which is why Jesse and I try and split up the days where you have to stay late, though by and large, we're both here at the end. Because we also, like you all, want to get in conversations and want to have those conversations. But we need to also be that to not just our close friends in the space, not just the people that we like, but to everybody. And you know, it just becomes a real challenging thing to be there. It's important not to lose sight of that story on the road to Emmaus, when their eyes were open and saw Jesus. You never know what in a conversation will open someone's eyes to Jesus. I am quite confident that that lady I talked to in Costco didn't think she was opening my eyes to Jesus. And yet she was. And I'll tell you, you know, in my own journey of faith, I remember I was working at the YMCA in Fort McMurray. I ran the swimming pool there, and part of my job became to take a group of teens to a leadership camp, a youth leadership camp. And how this worked was the adult leaders would all meet on a weekend before the summer, and we would go through a mini version of what the kids would go through. And then in the summer, you would bring back all the kids, and they would go through it in more depth. And the idea was you'd already been through it, so that week wasn't about you anymore. It was all about the kids, which worked to a mixed degree. Anybody's ever been part of that? People kind of jump in at every opportunity, and then we all met again in the fall, and it was everybody in sort of a reunion. And I was bumped with a guy. His name was Ted. I don't remember his last name. Ted was a strong Christian. He had brought a Christian group, and he and I had these incredible conversations I was not a believer. I was skeptical and doubtful, and he was unwavering, and he's just a lovely guy. And he was one of the first Christians that I encountered in my life who I love to talk to. We got no sleep that first weekend. I mean, none. We stayed up all night, every night we were there, and just talked. We talked about everything, and when I expressed my doubt, it didn't close him off, it didn't stop him, he also didn't become more impassioned to convert me. He just was open about his faith, and he was open about the fact that, he has doubts too, but he believes to his core in God. And it was just amazing conversations. I would love to remember Ted's last name. I'm sure he told me. I would love to get in touch with him and just say to him, you were the first step in my chain. You were the first one. I don't remember. I've racked my brains. I'm sure some night at 3 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep, it's going to pop into my head. And then I'm going to feverishly search Facebook, trying to find it. But you never know what will open someone's eyes to God. And Ted did. Now, I wasn't a convert that weekend. I wasn't a convert that week in the summer. I wasn't a convert in the fall. But he started me on my journey of faith. He started me on that path that a few other people were influential in, and then finally, some of you know the story of my physics teacher, and that ended that whole journey. All of a sudden, I knew that God existed, and what I'm trying to say to you in my fumbling way is, you never know who needs a touch from God. You never know who needs their eyes opened, whether they're a believer or not. Who needs to feel and hear God's presence in the simplest of conversations? She didn't talk about God to me. She talked about the weather. And then she talked about how fortunate she felt to be able to buy groceries for her family. And that just was what I needed to be reminded of on that day. How fortunate I am. How lucky I am to be a part of River of Hope Church. I love this body of believers. I don't care what building we're in. I don't care if we're building less. This is an amazing group of people, and you should let other people see that. That young man needed to see that this group of people, and when he comes back, and I believe he will, he needs to see then that we are an amazing group of people that love him, forgive him, that want to see him come in and enter into a genuine and real faith and following Jesus Christ for all the days of his life. We need to show that. I believe that that's who we are. And as we go about our days, we need to be that outside of these walls. Some churches put up a sign, as you exit the building, the mission field starts through these doors. And I always hate those signs because it doesn't. It starts in here. It has to start in here. And it starts in here. And it continues up there. But if it hasn't started in here, it doesn't matter what happens outside. Unless you feel it in your heart, it won't be real. So the road to Emmaus, this couple has this incredible encounter with Christ, and their eyes are open, and he tells them all of the things that they need to be reminded of. And then they go, yeah, that was Jesus. And then they shared it with other people. That's our journey. That's our challenge. That's our faith. Prayer. Father God, thank you so much for reminding us, for reminders of the truth, for reminders of who you are. We thank you for the people that are meeting here on this Sunday morning, the people that walk in our building every Sunday, the people that we encounter day by day. Help us to be your voice, your eyes, your arms, your legs. Help us to be your heartbeat for the people that we encounter. Help us to see them as people that you love. It's tough. There are days where it doesn't